And so I think it's important that you understand the clinical trial process. I'm not saying that the pill is bad. I just want you to think about how to make health decisions for yourself. You want to be especially vigilant, especially staying on top of it. Once I got the information I needed, I started to move in that direction about how to make health decisions for yourself.
In your mind, what would you say to brothers that's not vaccinated or just people in general?
I'm glad to hear you are protected, and thanks for being so honest here on Keeping It 100, because that's what we do.
Wait a minute, I done messed up my mute button. Hey everybody, welcome to Keeping It 100. I am your host, Dr. Kristin Motley. Really excited to be here. Of course, we have an amazing show for you today. Dr. Tyan Thomas is here as my co-host, and she's gonna be on double duty again. She's gonna hold it down in the chat and make sure you all have the resources that you need. And if Georgie Mink Jr., aka the street practitioner, he may join us. Hopefully we get a cameo from him today. He can catch us up with what's been going on in his world. But Dr. Thomas, thanks for coming in.
Hi, everybody.
As you know, my little poor child, Noah, he's 3, it's my son. He was in the ER on Monday night from what they said was asthma exacerbation. It is allergy season. I know Les was just talking about her daughter was in the ER for asthma too. It is just a lot, like this pollen. It's just a lot going on. So I just wanted to kind of, talk about that a little bit and the experience. He woke up on Monday, he was coughing, and I didn't want to send him to school coughing. He didn't have a fever or anything, but he was just coughing. I was like, I don't think that's a good look, just to send him to school coughing, because they're going to call me and say he coughing. And what you want me to do? He got to come home because he coughing. All them kids with them snotty noses coughing all day long. So I was like, I ain't even gonna let them set me up. So I let him stay home. But by that night, he was breathing really fast. And that's when I knew that something was weird. So I called the nursing line, and it was like, take him to the ER. So we get to the ER, and that's what they found out. So I don't know. It was just a lot. That was the first time I ever had experience taking him to the ER for breathing or anything related to asthma. So that was interesting. Do any of your boys have asthma or like allergies or anything like that?
I'm sorry, it was breaking up. Can you say that again?
Yeah. Do any of your boys have allergies or asthma or anything?
Allergies, but not asthma or anything like that. But I have had the experience of having to take them to the ER for just like a really bad cold and things like that. And it's not a fun experience, but I will say the kids' ERs are actually like really good with like keeping them comfortable. And so it was like a good experience with it being like a scary experience. So did you go to a kids' ER? Was it like were they really good with Noah and kept everything calm and comfortable for him?
Yeah, we did go to a pediatric hospital, which was great because you're right. They do a really good job with the kids and making sure that they're comfortable and keeping them like entertained, and just using words and gestures to help the kids feel relaxed, especially because they could be in there for a scary situation. But so yes, and the providers were all really good. The physician who saw them was a female. Really personal. I'm like, if I go to the ER, I'm gonna call first and see if she's here, because she was just really that good. She really, was clear that she really cared. She kind of made us felt like she really did care, and that was like that just made a big difference.
I'm glad he's feeling better.
Yeah. So he's back at school today. I know I probably got on the teacher's nerves. I was like, a few things regarding his return. Number one, is his medication in the nursing office, and is it in the classroom? Because who got time to be waiting for somebody to go to the nurse office and it's locked because she ain't there, and then y'all gotta try to find the key and then get the medicine back. And then I was like, does everyone who takes care of Noah know how to use an inhaler with a spacer and a face mask? And if not, what's the plan to make sure that everyone who takes care of him knows how to do that? Please check the expiration dates on all his medicine and let me know if you need me to bring anything in. And does everyone know the signs and symptoms of an asthma attack and an asthma exacerbation? So they emailed me back and it was like, we got it all covered. Y'all better, because I'm coming with the test. When I get off of work, I'm coming with the test, and y'all better pass this exam I'm about to give y'all on all the things I'm asking about.
All right, so, Dr. Motley, we ready.
Oh my God. So I feel comfortable. I do have to take an inhaler because the one that they have expires next month. So I'm gonna take a new inhaler over there. But it's just a lot. So I encourage parents. And I was talking to George last week. A student at his school had an asthma attack at school, and they did not have an inhaler there. And it almost, if I had time, I would just go over to that school and review everybody's charts, call the parents, call the pharmacies, and get those rescue inhalers. So for people who have children with asthma, the most important thing that you can do is make sure there is a rescue inhaler, like albuterol, with them at all times. Wherever they are, there should be a rescue inhaler. There should be one at home. There should be one at school. And wherever you are, it has to be with them, because you don't know when it's going to happen. They have to have that medicine available to open up their lungs.
And make sure it's late too. And because when you don't use it that much, you don't realize like it might expire in between. So that's one of the things I always tell my patients to check on, things like that. Because thank goodness you're not using it. But then if you're not using it, you might not be checking to see when the date expires. So that's important too.
That's a really, really good point. And then Les had put in the chat to make sure that they also have an asthma action plan, which is critically important. So you want to have the rescue inhaler at home, at school, and wherever the child goes. If they have a book bag and they're like out and about throughout the day, hanging with their friends, they need to put it in their bag, in their pocket. It needs to be on their person at all times. And then you want to make sure that you in the school, at least, or camp, because camp is coming up too, they have an asthma action plan, and that everyone who takes care of your child knows what to do when the child has any kind of breathing difficulties. So that is really, really important. It's a lot that we can talk about asthma. I'm hoping to get a grant to do some parent support of children that have asthma soon. So you hopefully will be hearing about that. But no child should really die from asthma, because you just need to make sure you have the quick acting inhaler with them at all times. And that should open up their airways enough until emergency services come. Oh, child. So
very true.
That's all I wanted to kind of mention there. Anything else you want to add, Dr. Thomas, about asthma?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the main points. I mean, I think this time of year can be tricky because it's allergy season. And so knowing your kids' triggers too, and making sure you tell people who are caring for your child is also helpful, so especially at school, if, it's the end of the school year and maybe you haven't had to go through the action plan since the beginning of the school year, it's a good time to just go ahead and just go through it again, right? I think that's the other thing, just making sure you know the triggers and knowing, especially if the triggers are seasonal, knowing like this is the season where, allergies are coming on, and allergies, a lot of times kids who have asthma have allergies as well. And so when they get exposed to pollen and all this good stuff floating around, that can cause like these asthma attacks and things like that. So.
Thank you. Thanks for those reminders. One thing that I also want to mention is that the World Health Organization have declared that the COVID-19 emergency status has come to an end. So that means that a lot of the programs and a lot of the funding and all the things that are triggered once the World Health Organization declares that there's a health emergency, all that comes to a stop. Now, we already know that the U.S. was pulling back on COVID vaccines and treatments and testing starting May 11th. So that was already coming. But I just want to remind everyone that if you are not protected, encourage you to get the COVID vaccine if you haven't already. It's been available for a number of years now. Millions and millions of people have been vaccinated, and it's been overwhelmingly safe. It has been overwhelmingly safe, and trust me, all eyes are on it. I would not be telling my people to do something that I didn't trust and that that I wouldn't support. It actually took me a while to start talking about the COVID vaccine because I was like, I'm not getting that. I'm not doing that. But once I got enough information, I was able to make a decision, and I chose to get vaccinated. I chose to get my kids vaccinated, but it took me some time to come around to that. So I'm not just telling you because I'm getting paid to tell you because I benefit from it, because I don't. I'm just trying to make sure my people have the information. And if you have questions or concerns, you can reach out to me. I'll be glad to answer any questions or concerns that you have. But the world is back, and all this support is coming to an end. So you have to make sure that you are protected in the best way you can be before you want to get protected and it's too late because you can't afford it or you don't want to pay for it or whatever it is. Take advantage of it now while it's covered. And I do want to remind you all that as of May 3rd, there were 6.9, almost 7 billion people, million people, I'm sorry, 7 million people who died from COVID. I'm like, billion, that's a lot. I had to reread those comments. But 7 million people dying is a lot of people. I just think of 7 million funerals that had to take place, and moms and dads and children and grandparents and siblings that are not here anymore because of this. And we have a vaccine now, thank God, that can prevent those deaths. So, let's do what we can to be here and to live our best lives. I don't know, Dr. Thomas, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So even though the immediate kind of pandemic is over, death rates are down and things like that, I think we're still living, and I don't know how long this will be, but I think we're living in the aftermath of, the loss of 7 million people worldwide, So I think it really brings it back to the fact that this is Mental Health Month, because even though, we think that we're okay, we're not okay collectively as a society. And even more so, our friends and family who have lost people, close to them. I mean, they're still kind of going through things. And so we just have to also remember we're back, but we're not back like we were before, or hopefully we don't try to get back to where we were before without taking time to recognize the loss and giving space for, our friends who have lost people and might be just in a different mindset. So I think we also have to reset kind of our mental health expectations and how we support each other. So I was just going to add that to the mix.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you did, because May is Mental Health Month. And so as you all know, we are covering all things mental health here on this show this month. Today, we're going to be talking about the power and the danger of silence, which is a really hot topic. And when our guest, Yana Walker, said that that's what she wanted to talk about, I was like, yeah, let's talk about it, sis. So let's bring in Yana. She is here with us today, the Temple Warrior. She is not a stranger to the show, but for anyone who does not know her, she wants you all to know that she is the curator of all things healing. I don't know if y'all can hear me or not, but I'm gonna repeat that, because when she said it, I was like, I need to step my bio up, because my bio is a little too extra. She wants you all to know, in case you missed that she is the curator of all things healing. She is an educator and a healing guide. Yana, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you for having me. I love being here.
Hello.
Yeah.
Glad to have you.
Let's get it.
I'm ready for some curation. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, my sound is messed. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. I have like a delay on my end, but I just want to get right into this because it's a really unique topic that never even crossed my mind. But when I saw it, I was like, that is so deep. So I know you're a therapist, and so I wonder, how has silence impacted how has it impacted the mental health of the clients that you see? I'm sure this came from you being at work and like,
Definitely. And I think generationally, just looking at my own family, but, and other people's families, most people of color, we live in a space of silence, right? Or have in the past. We're trying to change that narrative. But when I sit with clients and silence, when they come to the table, usually it is that there's been a straw that has broken the camel's back. So they weren't going to willingly kind of, come in. They hit a crisis point, and so then they're reaching out for help. But when people come in and they have experiences that they're keeping inside in silence, they truly question their whole existence. And you'll see that they'll apologize. I have a lot of people that will apologize for their own feelings before they're saying this, or they will criticize themselves. I know this is going to sound crazy, and I shouldn't be saying this, but right? So the self-criticism that comes in is a part of that silence. When we're silent, I notice that clients don't have the ability to have that critical piece of fact-checking their own narrative, the storyline that they're telling themselves in the world around them. And when you don't have that ability, when it's kept in silence and shrouded in silence, that's like the perfect little petri dish to breed more shame and self-deprecating behavior. Yeah. So it's something that I slowly work through with people. They come in and they just want to automatically be on the other side of this. Let's get through this piece, and I just want to move forward. And I'm like, well, sis, bro, you can't move forward until you unpack those bags that you're carrying on your back. Sure, you can move forward, but you're going to topple back on the weight of what you're carrying. So
why are people holding on to things? Like, what is the reason that we're not talking about it?
I think in families, usually it is that, what you're saying is either taboo, and a reason, it's a cycle that continues. So one way that we see this often, right, is with sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. We just don't talk about it. And really, the reason why children are not allowed to talk about it is because the adults haven't talked about it, and the adults have experienced it, and they are not going to allow you to open up the can of worms for them. Because then that means that I need to deal with my own issues and my own shame. So what we're going to do is just, if you didn't wear that dress, or if you didn't wear that skirt, or if you didn't sit, you shouldn't have sat on his lap or her lap, or you shouldn't have done this one, and starting to blame that the victim, right? The person that has been receiving the abuse. So even in terms of silence on how to handle finances. So then we have generations that are like, I don't know, I guess you open up a savings account and a checking account and like try and keep it above zero, right? So silence, not passing down what we know or asking questions about what we don't know, leads to further generations thinking that this is the norm, that silence is to be revered. Like, look how they just let that roll off of their back and keep moving. I hope that answered that correctly for you. Or fully.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, yeah. It makes perfect sense, because I feel like I just experienced that. Bilal and I were talking about something recently related to our finances, and I'm like, why don't we know this already? We are 40 years old. Like, why are we just learning about this? And I felt like, with you saying, just not asking the right questions, or people not telling us, like our parents, because, for our parents, they didn't know. But I guess we could have asked questions, but then you don't know what you don't know. And it just, it just gets frustrating for us, because we are, just as a people, we are so behind. We are so behind. We don't know like a lot of the tricks and the strategies. I've been learning new tax strategies that them old white boys been using for years. And I was like, got one in my bag. Let me try this year. And I got a nice refund because I was talking to someone that knows.
Mhm.
And if you're not talking to
Yeah.
to people who know how to do things
Yeah.
different, then you don't learn it. But now my children would know, because I'm a teach them. But it's like, why are we just learning? It's just really
Well,
frustrating.
there's also the trust issue, right? Because you have to feel comfortable telling a person you don't know what you don't know, or
Sure.
at least it's being open to the conversation. And I think that's the other part of it too, that I would suspect probably affects us even more, because we also have that weight of not wanting to be vulnerable, especially in the majority population, because we know how that can go. So I know it's a whole other conversation, but I think it does bring up a good question about how do we start like asking those questions that people don't want asked, to kind of try to start to normalize, like even just with finances. Because I mean, to me, that seems a little cleaner, like, with other things like sexual abuse, there's so many taboos there where but I guess, how do we even start this? Like, who's going to be that first person to ask the question, and who's going to be the person brave enough to answer it, and just kind of get the conversation going? How can we start that process?
I think honestly, it starts with you as an individual, me as an individual. You know what I'm saying? Asking ourselves the questions like, what's something I want to learn about or I want to try? I bet there are some other strategies out there that I can use to tackle, paying for home owner's insurance, or I bet there's some other, ways around that or the other. Let me ask, or let me Google, or let me find leads. But I think that we have that ability. We're not in what generations before us were living solely in fight or flight or freeze. That's where it was about day to day. I'm just trying to make it until tomorrow. But I think we've been blessed to stand upon their shoulders and have a little bit of breathing room. Not much, but we have a little bit of breathing. We have a little bit of breathing room, so we can have time to ask those questions of ourselves. And I think it's can we sit with ourselves and say, there's a lot that I don't know, but I can, it's how that shift kind of in customer service happened from like, you just tell them, you make up an answer and tell them something, but it became more acceptable and more vulnerable and more connecting when you had a server that, you're like, how is the such and such? I haven't really had that, but I do know somebody over there, somebody that works here over there has tasted it. Let me go ask them and I'll get back to you and let you know. I trust you because you didn't blow smoke up my butt. But it's can we be a little bit more vulnerable with ourselves? We can't be vulnerable with anybody else until we're vulnerable with ourselves. And it's like,
That's
why it can be frustrating, that we don't know these things that other people have already known and taken off with. But can we sit with the beauty of the fact that in the face of everything that we've been through, I still have the ability to ask the questions. I still have the ability to think outside of the box and be the one to break that, which is, that's amazing in and of itself. So I think, to answer your question, starting with yourself, and really sitting with, what are some things that I've been silent about? What are some things that I would rather have avoided that I'm, can sit with? I was actually sitting with somebody not too long ago, and we were talking about grief and grieving, and how we have a tendency to dissociate and want to go into, okay, well, I'll plan the logistics, and I want to make sure that, so-and-so, this person over here, my child, knows how to go through the grieving process. Well, so what do you think about that? What should I do in terms of getting, this child ready for that? And I'm like, well, let's talk about you first, because the child is going to follow you. Yeah. So check in with yourself on how you're feeling about grief and dying. What's the narrative that you've been given about that? So when it comes to mental health, when it comes to things to share, when it comes to emotions to share, do you feel like you can cry in front of your children? Do you feel like you can cry in front of a friend? And if you don't, there's some space to check in on why. There's some messaging that needs to be kind of decoded for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. That's good. I wanted to ask you too. So when we are keeping things in and not talking and not say sharing certain aspects of our lives, especially when it was trauma and hurtful, how does that show up in our relationships or at work? How does that impact our life?
So that you often, and this is a term a lot of people are hearing, is that you will self-sabotage. That's critical. You will self-sabotage everything. I can't tell them about who I am. I can't show up as myself because that's not good enough because I've experienced X, Y, and Z, and they'll leave. So then you start to show up in ways where it's like, I don't care anyway. Go ahead and go, right? That's the other person is like, go ahead and go then. We don't, number one, the silence in relationship at work, right? Imposter syndrome showing up. I'm not good enough for this job. They're going to find out that they just gave me this job and I don't have any of the skills. Knowing good and well you've been to school for like 40 years and you have the ability to perform the actions, but it's the internal meter that is off, that is not interpreting that information correctly. So you have imposter syndrome, self-sabotage in relation to others, mostly because in silence, you're not learning what it is you're feeling. So having that connection to emotions is lacking. So if you can't understand what you're feeling, you can't interact with somebody else about feelings and be vulnerable, which is critical to intimacy. If there's no vulnerability, there's no intimacy, there's no relationship developing. It's one person's customer service representative meeting another person's customer service representative until, the mask falls off and then one person's like, wow, I'm out.
Wow.
That's really who you are? Okay.
Yeah, wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is. I think that there are so many ways that when we don't get to sit with our feelings, when we don't get to name emotions and understand what we're feeling, that we, end up either projecting those emotions onto other people or finding a way to blame somebody else for what we're feeling, because that's what's done to the person that's been silent. Think about it. If you're silent, if you are in a state of being silent, which is a learned behavior, then that learned behavior is usually through a punishment cycle, right? Speaking got you either hit or told to shut up or go in your room. So you weren't able to speak that truth. There was punishment involved in it. And we're going to try to avoid that punishment at all costs. So we never get the connection between our emotions. Like, how does that feel? Drawing the connections with our feelings. So it's, if you have that punishment cycle, you're going to go into adulthood thinking that punishment cycle continues with your significant other, thinking that punishment cycle continues with your boss.
So how, so as you were talking, one thing I started thinking about is, in our community, we are taught to, show deference or, honor ancestors is the term I'm hearing it used now. And so that sometimes can lead to the whole mindset of, it worked for my parents, I'm going to be that same parent for my kids. And I understand like the reason for the mindset, but I guess I don't know if that's like a stronger, like kind of thing we have to get over. Like, I feel like we're in this generation where we're kind of trying to let go of what we saw, but, also to be different for our generation. But I guess, how do we kind of fight through that? And what can we do for our, to kind of be that middle passage to like getting to a new space for, recognizing mental health, showing vulnerability in the Black community?
So, I think that there is a way to look at this, and I think that's a great question. When you look at, there's a difference, and we are just getting to a point to understand that, where we can love a culture, but know the difference between culture and dysfunction. And sometimes dysfunction is masqueraded as family traditions and cultural traditions. So if we can, with love, venerate our ancestors in the way, like, you know what, you made a way, like you had to do some stuff I don't even know if I could do. where you are, to give me the opportunity to be where I am. And I appreciate that. But I also know that along the way, you had some hurts and you learned some dysfunctional ways of coping. They learned some dysfunctional ways of coping. But can't we do better for ourselves and for them and for the ones that come after us? Right? So I think it's starting there, where it's calling a thing, like Jan Van Zandt used to say, right? It's calling a thing. So that dysfunction is dysfunction. It's not culture, it's not heritage. You know, there's difference too. And I think that those that are protecting the dysfunction will say that this is just the way we do it. Don't ask any questions, this is the way we do it. Because we have, when you grow up in dysfunction, you created a house of cards, you know, this flimsy house of cards. And your sole job in that then becomes to protect that house of cards against anybody who tries to come and dismantle it. So it's like, oh, what you're saying, this is not the way to do it. No, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you're no longer welcome to Christmas dinner. You can no longer come around to such a, you know, the person that speaks out is like, oh, you're never, you know, you're not allowed. And they're thinking that they can shame you back into the fold, right? But then there comes that one, you know, that one child or grandchild that was like, well, you know what? Forget you then. I don't have to come to your stupid dinner. I don't even want to be there.
I ain't never like your macaroni and cheese anyway.
And then people are like, I think they have a point.
It spreads, right?
Yeah, I think we can definitely honor, you know, where we have come from, and know that those traumas that our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents have endured have left this residue of silence. Prior to, you know, if there was something that was illegal, that somebody was doing abuse that was being performed on a family member and pre-civil rights, well, you were like, we'll handle.
We lost Yana.
Oh man.
But that was really interesting. I was going to ask her about the dysfunction, calling a thing a thing. I think a part of it is that we don't even know we're in dysfunction. We, you know, like it's times where we're just so far and so deep into it that we don't even recognize it, because it's like you said, it becomes culture. So it's normal for us, but it's actually dysfunctional. So I wanted to ask her, you know, how do we even identify dysfunction so we can work on it?
Yeah.
What's the answer, Dr. Thomas? You know everything.
Hey, I wish I knew. I mean, I do feel like you find that your person, and then maybe, you know, have that conversation one-on-one, and then your person has that conversation with another person one-on-one, and it kind of creates a critical mass. I don't know if that's the right answer. This is just me saying, like, maybe that's the way, and that's how ideas spread, right? Like one by one and things like that. So maybe that's kind of the way, because I honestly don't know, but to even have that awareness, you know, maybe that takes that your person, you know, that trusted person that's even saying, hey, have you ever thought about, like, fill in the blank, whatever the case is. So I think just being open to, like, hearing people and in their authentic moments, even if we don't agree, not like holding on to that. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Like, kind of stepping back and just saying, let me process it, whatever the case is. Like, just being open to hearing it from, like, trusted people. And then that puts us in a new mindset where when we hear from other people who are like, I don't know those people, but we could take in the message differently. Maybe that's kind of the way it is. Just kind of showing up.
That's a good idea, because, you know, it kind of goes back to trust, just like what you mentioned earlier. So if there's trust there, then you can have those conversations and be more willing to be open and to get honest feedback and honest, like, insight. So I think that is a good strategy. And then taking it from 2 people talking to maybe 3 or 4 people talking about it, and why it may not be the best way to do things, or the best way to think about things. And then you start spreading those ideas like you mentioned. So I get that.
Yeah.
Well, Yana say that I don't know, but I totally get what you're saying. And I do like that approach to dealing with dysfunction, because I think a lot of times, I mean, just us talking about my situation where I'm like, why don't we know that by now? It's just, you just don't know what you don't know. And I always, just try to wonder, how can I pull those things out that I don't know so that I can find out.
And just starting by saying, I don't know, why don't I know? And saying that to Bilal, your trusted person, who then he may go and say it to, cousin or Phil, and then it just kind of like you hit this critical mass. And I'm coming back to something that I remember we talked about last week when I think we were saying, when we have a person who's hesitant to make a decision, or is kind of like, not trusting a decision related to healthcare or whatever the case is. And we said, if they keep hearing it from people in different avenues of their lives, so like they hear it at church, they hear it at work, and then they're hearing it on the radio, then it's kind of like, wait, that person said that like a couple of months ago. Like, it's like maybe there's some merit to it. So I think that's kind of that same theme of like just being okay with saying it, even if it's to just that one person, like then they'll be open to hearing it again. It just seems like that's kind of what I've noticed of late. Like, I guess it's over the past 3 years when it's come to the COVID vaccines, where it's just, you just keep hearing it and it just puts you in a new mindset. But we have to be open and be ready for that growth mindset, I think is where that is. And I don't know. I'm just rambling now.
No. But I think you're right, because I know the CEO and founder of CMPradio.net, Jean-Pierre Bryce, he was not getting vaccinated. I talked to him many times. I gave him information. I addressed all of his questions, his concerns. He understood what I was saying, but he was like, I'm not doing it, doc. I'm good. I'm not doing it. And he kept hearing it. And then one day he was hosting an event, doing like a live broadcast for one of my vaccine clinics. And we was also on the bus talking, and everyone on the bus was vaccinated and just talking about the vaccine. And then the light bulb went off in that brother's head. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to get vaccinated. So you are absolutely right. It's just hearing the messages over and from different people. Yeah. So hold on real quick. My daughter is helping my grandma while I'm up here talking, and the physical therapist is at the door. And I said, don't let nobody in and don't answer the phone. And she said, it's the physical therapist.
She's doing what she's supposed to do. Yep.
How do you know it's him? Is my question to her. How do you know?
Tell him, show his ID
on the calendar. Exactly. So just bear with me a few minutes, y'all, as I try to get PT in there for my grandma. But I was going to say, I remember what it was we didn't know. We were talking to some business people in Brooklyn one day, and we had found out that they own like a whole block of stores, and they're Black. And I'm like, how y'all do that? How do you get to the point where you own a whole block of stores in Brooklyn? Like, that was just so impressive to me. Okay. She know because my grandma said that's my physical therapist.
Yeah, it's breaking up, so but I heard Brooklyn, a block of stores. You said you were asking them how they were able to accumulate the wealth to buy the whole block of stores, right? I think that's what I got.
Yes. So a Black couple in Brooklyn own a whole block of real estate. Like, they own the real estate, a whole block. And that was just really impressive to me. And so we just, we're talking to them, and we just asked, how did you get to the point where you can own a whole block of real estate? Like, how do you do that? And they said that they used the equity from the house that they lived in to start purchasing property. And that's what they did. And I'm like, why don't we know that? Why didn't I know to use the equity in my house to purchase property? Why am I 40 years old and I'm just learning that?
Yeah,
and it's crazy because we know that is how white people got a lot of their wealth. Like, we know that that's how they got a lot of their wealth over the years. But it never clicked in my head that I should be one of those people to do that. It should have. Like, why didn't that click in my head? And it's just so frustrating. So anyway. Yana says she's back. She might not be able to get in. Let me send this message.
Okay. But that's even a big step that you asked, because like, I don't even know if I would have thought to ask. I was like, you would have been like, what is this girl sitting here worrying about? Like, this is me thinking, this is girl sitting here thinking in my pocket, thinking about my finances. So
why she in my business?
So like
it just blew my mind. It blew my mind that they were the owners. And the crazy thing is, they never told us. We were in one of the shops, and the shop owner just happened to mention that the couple that lives around the corner that owns the bed and breakfast around the corner, they also own the shop and all the shop, that they own all the property. And it was like, what? So we took our little behinds back around to our B&B and was like, excuse me, first of all, not that you should be telling everybody that you own this whole block, but that's decent. How you even get into that? And so anyway, we were just talking about not knowing what you don't know.
But we did have the one. What was your one question, Dr. Motley, about?
Oh,
yeah, the awareness.
So you were talking about not knowing, and I was just wondering, how do you tap into that? Because you don't know what you don't know, and so how do you start to have? I think I was wondering, how do you start to have those conversations? No, it wasn't that. What was it?
It was about if you don't know, right, and everyone else is doing it, it seems normal. Like, how do you start to build the awareness to know? Like, is that what it was? Like, how do you build the awareness to realize I'm not knowing something and I need to? Is that, or did I just completely make that up?
Yeah, let's just say that's the question. Let's just go with that as the question.
Go with that, right? So you know what? So another area, that I love is mindfulness. And I think the more that you get still, you see other people's movements. And then you start to get piqued by their, well, why are they doing that? Or why are they doing X, Y, and Z? And allow that to be something that's a catalyst for you to start looking into different ideas for yourself. When you're like, well, why is that family down at Disney in like the luxury hotel and they got all this, how do they do that? And it leads you down kind of the rabbit hole of finding out more. But I think that, instead of focusing on, let me learn things that I don't know, I say, let your love lead you. Let things that you're passionate about lead you to learning things that you'll find things that you have not known before. You know what I mean?
Good. That's good.
Take yourself out of that I'm behind the 8 ball to let me focus on what I love. What is a passion for me is to leave behind a legacy of wealth. And I'll tell you right now, Clubhouse, at least for a while, there were a lot of rooms that were telling you like real estate, ways to get into real estate and build an estate for yourself, for your family, for your kids. And so but if I went there because I was like, I wanted to buy my first home. And then I was like, oh, well, let's see these rooms. And I started listening, and I would write down little pieces that I would get from them, and I had a client that told me about this program. And so now I'm sitting in this house that I purchased in less than a year through that program.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right? It's like, what are you passionate about? And again, I would say, the end of 2021, going into 2022, I made a vision board. And on that vision board, I actually kept it out downstairs, was me buying a house with it had the sold sign, in front of the house for the picture out of the magazine or whatever. And I let it be free there. Like, it had so much love behind it. And then the momentum just started building because I would put myself in spaces of things that I loved. And I love that idea of having something that I can give to my kids and that my mom can come and live in, and that, that it's there for my family,
Yeah.
And love then had all of these, like, all the information comes in because it's coming from a place of love. If you have from there's so much I don't know, this is a disgrace, I'm behind the 8 ball, it's already coming from a place of shame and punishment.
So true.
You want to lift that energy into a space of, I'm doing this because I love it. Like, I just want to learn more about, I don't even care if it goes anywhere. I just want to learn more about X, Y, and Z. And then like all of a sudden you're like, what? Like, look at all these things I'm able to do now because of what I love. That love is the momentum that you want.
I love it. We knew she would have the answer.
Awesome.
We knew you'd have the answer.
She had it. TT had a good answer too. But I can appreciate coming from a space of love. That is incredible. That's great.
Yeah. That makes it feel better. It makes it feel like it's an adventure as opposed to you got makeup homework. from the t-shirt that you got to turn.
Yep.
You know what I mean, let it be from a space of love.
I love
Not
that.
adding more baggage. That's really important. That's really good. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Yana.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate you and everything you had to share.
Sorry, I got kicked out.
I'm sorry, we held it down. We started a whole new conversation. It was all.
I know.
All good.
Yeah. That's why we forgot the
Oh,
question, but hey, it's all
I
good.
Okay, thank you guys
Just
so
want
much.
to remind you all that COVID is out there. I know everybody in the government in the world is cutting off their programs, and that's all good. But making sure that you all make the decision you need to make for yourself to stay protected. That is really important. And COVID, it's not going anywhere. So we have learned to live with it. And a part of that includes getting vaccinated. And hopefully if you do get COVID, you don't get too sick where you have to go to the hospital or have anything else tragic that happens. So it's going to be around. We just have to figure out how to live with it. But make sure y'all tune in next week for another mental health topic during this Mental Health Awareness Month. We'll be here next Wednesday, 12:15 p.m. right here on cmpradio.net. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
I'm glad to hear you are protected, and thanks for being so honest